The moment I began reading this book, a system interface appeared before me, setting a strict condition: choose the role of either a notorious villain or the protagonist, the master of fate. Without thinking twice, I chose the path of a master, counting on the broad powers and authority that this status promised. However, the system turned out to be insidious. The role descriptions did not mention that the master I had chosen was a person with a severe disability, confined to the limitations of his body. Despite the shock of such a setup, I decided to follow the established rules of the game so as not to lose prematurely. But fate decreed otherwise. I categorically refused to have a romantic relationship with the main character, for which I was cruelly punished. I, along with my brother and fiancé, were sent to a damp prison. My imprisonment lasted for 5 long years. All this time I was under special supervision, which was more like constant torture and abuse. Rage filled me every day, and for 5 endless years I never stopped cursing both this white-skinned brother, who was to blame for my troubles, and the system itself that drove me into this hell. Finally, the system, realizing the futility of my cries, gave in and muttered, "Master, you need to cool down. We didn't foresee the imprisonment dragging on for so long. As compensation, we propose canceling the mission to pursue the main character." Upon hearing this, I immediately demanded, "Let's change the terms of the deal. I want to change my task." It suddenly became clear in my head. I no longer wanted to play catch-up with women. My goal was a large-scale experiment that would radically change the rules of the game. The request was accepted, and my status instantly changed. From a worthless prisoner, I became a shrewd businessman. I suddenly found myself wearing a blue business suit, which, with time and wear, had faded almost to white. The heavy metal prison door clanged open, letting me out, and the first thing I saw was Liu Ruyan, dressed in a strict military uniform. My brother Jai Boda stood next to her, surrounded by his team with whom we once worked shoulder to shoulder. He said with a fake smile, "I'm here to pick you up. We've been waiting for you for so long." At the sight of these two, the hatred I'd suppressed for years surged forth with renewed vigor. 5 years ago, it was Liu Ruyan and Jai Boda who sent me to prison, turning my life into the nightmare of the 1980s, where I was nothing more than a puppet in the hands of the system. In the past, under Baron Bach's tutelage, I deliberately chose to appear worthless in my fight against corruption, because keeping secrets in prison with a script in hand is a far more terrifying ordeal than simply playing the role of a weakling. Liu Ruyan gave me a searching look and cooed, "Oh my god, you've lost so much weight. Your tone has become so familiar, even softer than before. Admit it, you've missed me all these years, haven't you?" I stood silently, not deigning to respond, while Jai Boda grinned contentedly. "Brother, you don't know yet, right?" Jai Boda drawled. I glanced at Liu Ruyan and noticed new insignia on her shoulders. She now sported the rank of 2- or 3-star leader. 5 years of hardship had become my only experience, and I looked at them both with a stony face, expressing no emotion. Their status meant nothing to me, nor did the sight of Liu Ruyan's frowning face, which irritated me like a splinter lodged deep in the roots of my memory. "Stop talking to me like that," she continued, trying to manipulate me. "I promised you that as long as you were in good shape, I would wait. Those words still stand. You're still my fiancé, even though you've made me wait for so long." I heard every word she said, but nothing inside me moved. A cold indifference had completely overtaken me. But Jai Boda's gaze darkened at that moment, and he added with a hint of mockery, "Liu Ruyan, who has suffered so much over these 5 years. It must be all right," Jai Boda said, trying to smooth things over. "He'll never commit a crime again." I merely looked at him coldly in response, without saying a word, but there was such icy contempt in that look that he realized my words were unnecessary. As soon as I focused my heavy gaze on Jai Boda, he seemed to physically stagger, as if struck. He instantly snapped his mouth shut, completely silent. Liu Ruyan stood nearby, her expression annoyed, but she chose to remain silent, knowing that she was no longer in control of this conversation. We continued driving in the jeep along the potholed shoulder of the road. "It's time," Jai Boda said. "I'll take you home. Liu Ruyan still has a lot of unfinished business. She can't waste time on idle chatter." He drove Jai Boda and me to the house and then drove off, leaving us alone with Longmo, who was waiting at the door. Seeing us exit the car, she immediately beamed as if she had just won a great battle. Her gaze fixed on Jai Boda. "Uncle, did Liu Ruyan accompany you today? Why don't you stay for dinner?" Jai Boda glanced at me, full of glee, expecting me to protest. He watched my face closely, but I remained completely calm, betraying no emotion. Then Jai Boda, acting even more brazenly, deliberately slapped Longmu's hand. "Liu Ruyan has a serious mission in the army. She can't stay long." He confirmed that she couldn't stay for dinner, but added with emphatic emphasis that he would definitely take me for a walk tomorrow. The dragoness merely nodded meekly in response. She looked at him with such obvious love that I felt uneasy. It was precisely this affection I feared most. My thoughts raced through my head, but I was distracted when we finally crossed the threshold of the house. Longmu was already inside, fussing about something. I surveyed the surroundings, the layout of the house, the old belongings, the 5-year-old jar of incense. All of it shocked me by how much everything had changed. It turns out the difference in perception between the locals and me is a full 5 years. I whispered silently to the system, and it responded with a dull, almost pained hum. "Host, don't lose heart," the system responded. "We ourselves didn't foresee you embarking on such a risky plan. There will be another important scene in the prison dungeons. As compensation for past suffering, you can abandon your obsessive pursuit of Liu Ruyan and replace this task with something else." I listened to her, feeling a flame of determination ignite within me. "Are you serious?" I asked. The system answered affirmatively, but added that this was my only chance and I must be extremely careful. I sank into the road dust, feeling Longmu, concerned about my condition, begin to show concern. She sat me down on the sofa and I, frightened and nervous, reached for a glass of water. Then Yashin, who had been silent until then, opened his mouth. "Listen, you and Liu Ruyan were engaged, that's a fact. But the Liu family has been serving in the army for generations, and I definitely won't let you marry into that family. A son-in-law who is a former criminal. You understand, right? Why don't you just let your uncle marry Liu Ruyan?" I nearly choked on my water at the absurdity of the situation. "Are you just going to say this to my face?" I thought. I spent 5 years in hell, and after returning, I didn't hear a word of support from my birth mother, and now they're trying to persuade me to abandon my fiancé in favor of that same Jai Boda. "What's wrong, brother? Are you that upset? But you don't understand the main thing. You've been sitting here for 5 years, you're broken," he continued, looking down at me. "Even if I don't marry Liu Ruyan, she still won't love you anymore." I answered him with such icy calm that he involuntarily recoiled. I said quietly but firmly, "Fine, she's just a woman, I honestly don't care. I don't need to pursue Liu Ruyan anymore. This task is closed for me." Jai Boda was stunned. He clearly hadn't expected me to give in so easily. Hearing this, I couldn't help but grin. His triumph was merely a prelude. "Since you've already agreed, forget about dating her. After all, in the future, she'll only be your wife and you'll be their son-in-law," he said with a venomous sneer, literally trampling my feelings into the dirt. The word son-in-law sounded like a slap in the face. Jai Boda, pleased with himself, went upstairs with Longmu and asked loudly, just so I could hear, "Grandma, I'm soon to marry Liu Ruyan. Have the engagement gifts been prepared yet?" "Of course, grandson, everything is ready," Longmu replied with feigned politeness. "I'm just waiting for you to bring your wife into this house and give me a great-grandson." Their intimate conversation gradually faded, receding into the depths of the house. I grew sick of this idyll and I didn't want to stay in that house a minute longer. Stepping outside, I decided to immerse myself in the life that was rapidly entering the 90s, pondering my next steps as I passed the windows of expensive stores. An elegant clock in the window of a jewelry store caught my attention. Through the clear glass, I caught a glimpse of my reflection. My gaze was glassy, my face pale, like a burnt-out candle dripping its last drops of wax. I blinked, trying to shake off the image, and turned to leave, but at that moment the store door swung open and a woman practically ran into me. My God, what's going on? I looked around, trying to comprehend what kind of game they were drawing me into now. Looking into the face of the woman who appeared before me, I felt a strange, almost forgotten sense of recognition. I narrowed my eyes and slowly said, "Li Xia." Her face, clean and washed, seemed somehow alien in this gray world. "Do you remember me?" Her voice trembled with emotion. I couldn't believe my eyes, thinking it was just my imagination, but she continued to stand before me, and with each word she spoke, my own voice sounded quieter and more uncertain. "Li Xia was my classmate. Those cursed days 5 years ago when I was arrested, she too found herself at the epicenter of those events. Not wanting to dredge up the past, I decided it was best to simply leave and turned abruptly. Li Xia rushed after me, persistently trying to call out, "Long Yashin, wait, forgive me. I always knew you were innocent. I saw how you were framed." I slowed for a moment and glanced at her. Li Xia, with undisguised sincerity and tenderness in her eyes, placed a wristwatch in my palm. "This is a gift for you. Let it be a symbol of your new life," she said. I froze, staring at the dial, which gleamed dully in my hand. I was deeply touched, but my mind, hardened by years of hardship, immediately assessed the situation. This watch was worth at least 500 yuan, a fortune. I handed it back. Thank you for your kindness, Li Xia, but I cannot accept it. At that moment, a sharp, unpleasant shout pierced my head. Long Yashin, what are you doing here? I turned around and saw Liu Ruyan approaching. She unceremoniously snatched the watch from my hands, her eyes blazing with anger. Are you stealing again? Do you think I won't know you stole it from someone? I looked at her, unable to hide my astonishment. I never imagined her reaction would be so biased. It turned out that in her eyes, I would forever remain not just an ex-convict, but a degraded thief. Li Xia raised her eyebrows and calmly explained, this watch is a gift for Long Yashin. You shouldn't label someone if you don't know the truth. Liu Ruyan turned her gaze to Li Xia, her face twisted in disbelief. The distance between us seemed like an unbridgeable chasm. Liu Ruyan raised her eyebrows, and this habitual display of superiority only elicited a bitter smile from me. At that moment, Jai Boda appeared with some documents and a red bag. It became obvious he was purchasing everything necessary for our upcoming wedding. I looked around and realized everything was already decided. Liu Ruyan really did intend to marry him. Catching Jai Boda's eye, she nodded at him, then looked back at me, challenging, it's good you didn't steal anything. Then, turning to Li Xia, she added dryly, you shouldn't give him gifts, you should go home. Li Xia's gaze grew cloudy. She looked at me with such a mixture of sympathy and pain that it made me feel uneasy. I suddenly replied, deliberately provoking Liu Ruyan, I'll still take this watch. She's the most trustworthy person I know, and this gift is very precious to me. Liu Ruyan's face instantly darkened, turning into a thundercloud. Dear, she sneered, her voice laced with venom. Well then, take it as is. With that, she turned and walked away. Jai Boda, observing this scene, cast a long, piercing glance at Li Xiu and me. Jai Boda hurried after Liu Ruyan, shouting, wait for me. She didn't turn around, but her pace noticeably slowed. Watching them walk away together, I felt a sense of numbness inside me. I'd known it since the day I heard the verdict 5 years ago. There was no turning back. We had become complete strangers. I looked away, feeling a heaviness in my chest. I handed the watch to Li Xia again. Sorry, I said that on purpose to anger her. Thank you, but it's too expensive. Take it back. Li Xia remained silent, looking at me tenderly. She smiled softly. Don't burden yourself with thoughts of price. The old must go, giving way to the new. Just consider it discarded trash. I believe that in this new era, you will still show your generosity. These words burned me like a hot iron. I clutched the watch tightly in my hand, looking ahead. I understood her message. Thank you, Li Xia. Now I know exactly what I must do next. System, listen to me, I firmly said to myself. I don't want to play these games of attack and pursuit anymore. My goal is business. The system responded instantly. Accepted. Host's identity has been changed. Useless status revoked, and the status of commercial giant has been assigned. The journey begins again from scratch. The mission to attack Liu Ruyan has been cancelled. After saying goodbye to Li Xia, I returned home, where an unpleasant scene awaited me. The dragon mother, who had been chatting peacefully with Jai Boda on the sofa, became enraged at the sight of me. Long Yashin, did you deliberately provoke Liu Ruyan? Do you want to ruin your brother's wedding? I was dumbfounded by such injustice. When did I manage to provoke such anger? But my mother wouldn't let up, slamming her accusations in my face. Liu Ruyan is a wonderful, strong woman, and she loves your brother. What a wonderful couple. Why do you have such a bad temper? Why can't you be happy for your own brother? My attempts to defend myself were ignored. You should be fighting yourself, not him. If I'd known you'd grow up like this, I'd have asked the judge to give you even more years in prison, she screamed, accusing me of every mortal sin. I just laughed bitterly, knowing any arguments were futile. I wanted to object, but my mother barked, get to the pantry and think about your behavior. I wanted to go out to try to make peace with Jai Boda, but I came across a tightly closed door. This instantly sent a surge of panic through me. Every time I was bullied in prison, I was thrown into a tiny, dark cell. This was the most terrifying, most ominous memory, causing my face to instantly turn ashen. Why did I even bother interfering? I hadn't done anything wrong and wasn't even trying to plot against Jai Boda, but Long Mu seemed adamant in her hatred of me. God, what a worthless son you are, you don't even dare listen to me, she continued. Jai Boda stood nearby, grinning, watching this performance. Brother, don't act so pathetic, he hissed, coming closer. You've been in prison for 5 years. This cramped cell is the most familiar place for you, isn't it? I looked at his wrist, where the watch was adorned. Brother, give it to me, it's my wedding gift, he declared brazenly. I grabbed his hand, not wanting to give it up, but the dragon mother glared at me with such fury as if she were ready to tear me apart. "Just look at him, who knows, maybe he stole that watch too," she snapped. I looked at her, feeling my insides sinking. "Mother, even if I stole it, isn't it your fault as a mother for raising me like this?" She paused, noticing the coldness in my eyes, and was momentarily startled. This silent question made her retreat, and the drama suddenly died down. That night, after waiting for silence, I crept out of the room. As I stepped out into the hallway, I heard Liu Ruyan's voice. "Where is your brother?" Boda replied with feigned concern. "He just came out. Let's see how he adapts after 5 years of isolation." Liu Ruyan remained silent, and when she spoke, there was a hint of worry in her voice. "Really? He looked so happy when he came back. They say he had a nice chat with Li Xia." Liu Ruyan lowered her voice, and at that moment I just appeared in their sight. They fell silent. Liu Ruyan sensed the tension and asked, "What happened?" I decided to speak frankly, despite Boda's presence. I explained that he simply wanted to take my watch, and at that moment, Liu Ruyan's eyes flashed suspiciously. Her gaze turned gray and cold. Boda immediately began to wheedle. "Brother, you seem offended. I only asked for a gift. Why accuse me of stealing? You're playing the victim so effectively." His voice was deceptively calm. "Boda, how could I give you anything if I have nothing?" I began, but didn't have time to finish. "Long Yashin," Liu Ruyan snapped, her voice like a whip crack. 5 years in prison haven't taught you anything. Do you want to go back there again?" I stared at her in horror. I felt genuinely scared. It seemed they were seriously prepared to send me back to prison. "I didn't steal. These are my personal belongings," I exclaimed. "Are you trying to throw me behind bars just for existing?" I remember every moment of my injustice over the past 5 years. Hatred overwhelmed me. Liu Ruyan looked at me as if I were dirt beneath her feet. "Don't you dare talk to your brother like that. Calm down and don't try to attack him, or I won't stand on ceremony with you," she threatened. I stood there, choking with rage, and nightmares from my prison days came flooding back to me. How cruel prisoners beat me in a dead-end cell, how at first I resisted, and then, broken, I learned to endure any humiliation just to survive. Deep down, I knew it was better to live at any cost than to rot or be beat to death in prison. One day, Liu Yingzheng told us directly, "Take good care of this bastard." It was a clear hint that I would not be forgiven for even attempting to defend my rights or reclaim my property as long as I lived. My emaciated body was living proof of this care, and Liu Ruyan merely condoned this persecution. I was deeply upset by Boda's insolence. My face paled at the thought. Liu Ruyan noticed my state, her brows suddenly furrowing. "Long Yashin, what's wrong with you? Playing the victim again?" I turned away silently, unwilling to continue this performance. Chu Dian, as usual, shook Liu Ruyan's hand with feigned politeness. Somewhere in the back of my mind, a psychological trigger went off. I'm right, my strategy is silence and coldness. If they want to protect him, then I must stick to my guns without retreating a single step. After spending 5 years in hell, I've learned their ways, vicious, ruthless, considering themselves the gods of this world. Seeing my icy resolve, Boda visibly panicked. "Brother, why are you doing this?" he whined. "Can't you come to terms with losing this watch? I'm still not giving it to you." I said this deliberately to see his reaction. "Brother, you're my old classmate. Are you really that petty?" "You're a big boss now," he continued. "You can buy yourself whatever you want. You don't have to stoop to stealing anymore." I glanced at Boda briefly and said nothing. Liu Ruyan, watching this, only frowned deeper. "What else do you want to say?" she blurted out. At that moment, the dragon mother brought the food. Noticing Liu Ruyan's hurry, she approached her. "Stay for dinner. I'll have everything ready right away." She looked at me with obvious wariness. "Oh my God, go to the kitchen and stay out of the way. Don't embarrass us." I obediently trudged toward the kitchen, muttering something under my breath. As I passed Boda, I distinctly heard him whisper, "He won't cause any trouble in the kitchen." The cold dragon mother continued to whisper advice to her favorite uncle, agreeing with every word Liu Ruyan said. "Don't be so emotional," came the voice from the living room. "He doesn't understand anything anyway." She spoke slowly and mockingly. "Mother knows you don't want him to ruin the celebration." "But you don't even think about your position," Boda continued. "What position could possibly be worthy of Commander Liu? Even if she doesn't marry Uncle, it certainly won't be you. You're nothing to her." I felt incredibly strange listening to this nonsense. The dragon mother's demeanor resembled that of a thief's guard, desperately trying to cut me off from any hint of happiness. "Whatever," I muttered. "I'm too lazy to get involved." I continued preparing the vegetables, and soon a roast dinner was on the table. As I passed through the living room, I saw Jai Boda enthusiastically selecting a wedding gift chest from a mountain of presents. "Liu Ruyan, do you think this one will do?" he asked. She nodded with a beaming smile. "It looks nice," she replied. I looked away, feeling my insides tighten. As I was about to leave, I heard Liu Ruyan's sharp voice. "Hey, what do you think?" I just nodded, not even looking back at her. Great, I'm absolutely thrilled," I replied sarcastically. My fiancé had been taken away, and my ex-wife was asking for advice from the man they themselves had reduced to nothing. I couldn't bear to watch this cheap farce any longer. I set the dishes down and found an excuse to slip away. Stepping outside, I decided to spend the evening exploring the city. This era offered a wealth of opportunities, and I began to sense the potential for a future business. As dusk fell, I headed home. Just outside the courtyard, I bumped into Liu Ruyan, who was just leaving. I wanted to walk past, pretending not to notice her, but she spoke up. "My God, you've changed so much in these 5 years. You've become a completely different person." I froze and replied coldly, "Was it supposed to be any different? 5 years in prison isn't a vacation. Did you really expect me to stay the same?" Liu Ruyan paused for a moment, choosing her words. "If you really wanted to get back to normal, we could have helped," she said. "You just needed to stick with the right people and not go down the wrong path." Her hypocrisy made me sick. All this suffering was caused by them, Jai Boda and their minions, and now she's lecturing me about shortcuts. I was too tired to listen to this moral nonsense from the man who had ruined my life. I was about to leave when I heard her final words, apparently addressed to Li Xia. "She has such a serious business. What normal man wouldn't want to marry her? What makes you think she'd even like him?" I froze, stunned by her audacity, and it took me 2 seconds to realize the absurdity of those words. So this was Liu Ruyan's true intention. She was openly devaluing me, questioning my worth. Hearing this venomous attack, I felt an icy chill in my chest. Her tone grew even sharper. "After all, it's none of your business, so behave yourself." Liu Ruyan flushed at my failure to play along with her script. "What are you even talking about? We're about to become," she began, but I didn't let her finish. Interrupting her, I replied with icy calm, "Captain Liu, stop this talk. Our worlds are too different to continue this farce. Don't talk to me about it again," I added, turning and striding resolutely into the courtyard. Liu Ruyan stood motionless, watching my figure disappear around the corner. After 5 years in prison, Long Yashin had ceased to exist for her. Everything had changed beyond recognition. There was no longer any tenderness or love left in my heart for this woman. The first thing I did the next morning was go to Li Xia. I thought over my plan and decided it was time to leave for Guangzhou. Li Xi's mood noticeably improved when she heard this. "Excellent," she exclaimed, rummaging in her pocket and pulling out 2 tickets. "I've already prepared everything." "I'm asking you for the last time," she said, looking me in the eye. "The decision must be yours alone." I glanced at the departure date, tomorrow. Li Xia watched my reaction closely. "What's wrong with tomorrow?" It was the very day Liu Ruyan was supposed to marry Jai Badu. I just shook my head. "No problem. Everything will be fine tomorrow. I need to go back and pack." The deal was made. Returning home, I found chaos. The house was full of people. Jai Boda, discharged from the hospital, was busily preparing for the next day with his dragon mother. The entire house was decorated with red ribbons, and festive bustle reigned inside and out, but when she saw me, my mother froze. Her expression instantly changed from joyful to tense. She pulled me aside and hissed, "You look terrible. Tomorrow it's best to stay in your room and stay out of sight." There was a hint of falsehood in her voice. "Your brother's wedding must be perfect. Don't you dare ruin it with bad omens," she continued. "Listen to me. When your brother gets married, I'll find you a suitable wife from the army so you can finally settle down." I just nodded silently, realizing she still saw me as nothing more than an ex-convict. I skirted the crowd and disappeared into my room. I needed to gather the rest of my things. When I finished, I was surprised to realize there was almost nothing left to take. My entire life after prison fit into a single bag. It contained only my identification cards and the remains of what had once belonged to the Long family. All other property had long since passed into the hands of Jai Boda. The unnecessary junk was thrown out. The next morning, I was awakened by the sound of firecrackers coming from the street. The joyful cries of the guests filtered through the walls. "Uncle, what a joy it is to marry Commander Liu. I wish you a long and happy life. What a wonderful couple." People wished them a quick birth of a son and eternal love. The dragon mother literally glowed with delight, but this celebratory noise evoked nothing but a dull irritation in me. I got out of bed, keeping a straight face. I changed, grabbed my bag, and left the room. At that moment, voices were heard outside the door. The motorcade had arrived. The captain's car had returned. The bride arrived, the crowd erupted in cheers, and the firecrackers exploded with renewed vigor. The atmosphere became unbearably oppressive, and I tried to discreetly step aside. Glancing out the window, I saw Jai Badu, his shoes polished, step out of the car and offer his hand to Liu Ruyan. She followed him out, looked around, and her gaze met mine. I think she muttered something, but then she and her fiancé entered the house. I stood, pressed against the wall, watching this farce. Bag in hand, I was about to leave, trying to remain unnoticed, but then Liu Ruyan herself blocked my path. "Oh my God, where are you going?" she asked, frowning. "Why haven't you changed yet? What's with that bag?" I looked at her expressionlessly. "I'm just a guest here, and an uninvited one at that. Why do I need formal attire?" Liu Ruyan took a deep breath, about to begin her lecture again. The dragon mother immediately ran up to us, shouting out instructions. "Liu Ruyan, it's time to go to the ancestral estate. Hurry, he was just distracted for a second." She gestured nervously until Liu Ruyan, following the general flow, turned to me and gave a short instruction. "Hurry up and change into your best clothes. You can't look like this," she snapped and hurried away. As soon as Liu Ruyan disappeared, the dragon mother glared at me. "Why are you ignoring my words? Do you want to ruin your brother's wedding completely?" "I told you not to get underfoot," she continued, but I cut her off. "No, Mom, I'm not going to ruin anything. I just want to go out and buy a few little things." I started lying again to lull them into a false sense of security. "Don't worry, I no longer have feelings for Liu Ruyan. I don't care about their wedding, and I don't intend to argue with Jai Boda anymore," I said, looking past them. I calmly turned and left, knowing this was my last conversation with them. There was not a drop of love or duty left in my soul for this family. After the ceremony began, Liu Ruyan, according to ritual, was forced to cover her head with a red veil so she could bow. She felt strange, confused. Did Long Yashin really just change clothes so quickly and now lead me? Why does the ceremony require such strange formalities? The dragon mother was immediately at her side to dispel her doubts. "It's an old custom," she whispered. "The red veil symbolizes the well-being of your future." She forcefully placed Liu Ruyan's hand into the groom's palm. "Liu Ruyan, don't be late. Go to the wedding hall," she urged, and the bride, without further questions, obediently moved forward. She was sure everything was going according to plan. Fireworks boomed in the distance, the air filled with the smell of gunpowder, and a shower of bright flowers descended upon the couple. The crowd around them went wild, shouting congratulations. "Comrade Jai, Captain Liu, I wish you a long and happy life." Meanwhile, the guests were making unceasing demands. "Captain Liu, such a beautiful bride won't be yours for nothing. Groom, give us the red envelope, or we won't let you into the wedding hall." A burst of laughter erupted, and everyone around them began chanting their demands for gifts. The groom looked incredibly unsteady next to Liu Ruyan, his gait unsteady in the dense crowd. Liu Ruyan, tightly gripping the hand of the man leading her, sensed something was wrong. "Something's wrong here," flashed through her mind. The hand she held felt different. Long Yashin's fingers had been strong and broad before, but now she felt something different. His hand seemed shorter and thinner. But she quickly pushed the thought aside, deciding it was just her nerves. "After all, we haven't seen each other for 5 years, she thought. People change. It's normal that everything has changed in that time. Liu Ruyan's heart sank with a strange premonition. She had once personally sent Long Yashin to prison, tormented by long-held doubts, but then she had convinced herself it was for his own good. She took a deep breath, resolving to cast aside all fears. "The last 5 years must have been tough on him. He's lost so much weight," flashed through her mind as she looked at him over the edge of the blanket. She squeezed his hand tighter, trying to express the support she felt was her duty. Suddenly the groom staggered, his body went limp, and Liu Ruyan flinched in surprise. Her heart began to pound with anxiety again. She desperately wanted to lift the edge of the blanket and peer into his face, but she hesitated. At that moment, the dragon mother, seeing her son barely hanging on amid the crowd, rushed to his aid, handing out red envelopes to the guests. "Move away, everyone will get what they deserve. My son is getting married today, let them into the wedding hall. He's been waiting for this day for 5 years, hurry," the dragon mother shouted. The crowd roared, pounced on the envelopes, and at that moment a terrible crush erupted. One of the guests lost his balance, caught the edge of the red blanket on Liu Ruyan's head, and pulled it down with force. Her head rang from the noise. Liu Ruyan, feeling something tugging at her hair, closed her eyes in fear. She realized the ritual veil had slipped, revealing everything that was happening. In a panic, she began calling for someone to help her fix her hair, still trying to console the groom next to her, not realizing that the man she was marrying was not the one she was expecting. My confusion grew. I hadn't immediately indicated my agreement to this game, thinking that Long Yashin, meaning myself in the eyes of others, had long since disappeared. Glancing at the man next to the bride, I saw him frantically covering his face with his hands, clearly trying to avoid my direct gaze. Liu Ruyan's turmoil reached its peak. She grabbed her groom by the wrist and demanded imperiously, "Why do you always hide your face? Who are you?" The hand she gripped was tense to the limit. A fierce struggle broke out. As soon as Liu Ruyan tried to open it, unimaginable chaos erupted. The crowd, previously begging for red envelopes, froze when her icy, shrill voice rang out, "Who are you?" In the ensuing chaos, the one trying to take the gift from me was roughly pushed aside. And then Liu Ruyan finally saw the face. Her expression became completely unreadable. A mixture of shock and rage flashed in her eyes. Jai Boda stood before her. Jai Boda, dressed in my wedding attire, didn't dare look up. Liu Ruyan stared at him, and her gaze was so cold he almost backed away. "What do you mean? Where is my fiancé? Where is Yashin?" Her voice thundered, frightening everyone around her. The guests, who had been joking and laughing just a moment before, instantly fell silent. Only frightened whispers and questions could be heard. Wasn't this man, Jai Boda, supposed to be getting married? Why is he standing there instead? Liu Ruyan, ignoring her fiancé, turned to the crowd, demanding answers. "What's going on here? Wasn't I supposed to marry Long Yashin? Why did the fiancé suddenly change to Jai Boda? Is this a marriage of convenience arranged behind my back?" Hearing the crowd discuss this disgrace, Jai Boda's face turned deathly pale. He didn't know what to say. Liu Ruyan's gaze shifted to him, and there was so much contempt in that look that he felt worthless. "And what about me?" While Jai Boda was trying to wriggle out of it, I was already far away. The Dragon Mother, realizing their plan was falling apart, looked around frantically for me, but only Liu Ruyan was around, furious and ready for revenge, accompanied by her comrade, Commander Su. Jai Boda, feeling the ground slipping from under his feet, tried to block Liu Ruyan's path. "Liu Ruyan, why did you come back? Are you forgetting something? There's no need to rush, the ceremony must continue." She merely looked at him as if he were empty space. Her eyes seemed to turn to ice. She scared the mother dragon to death, hissing through her teeth, "Where is Long Yashin? Tell him to come down immediately and explain to me why you changed his name." The dragon mother trembled with panic, closing her eyes, unsure of what lie to concoct. Faced with Liu Ruyan's military past, which was practically palpable in the air, she merely stammered, "Oh my god, I don't know. He's not here." The temperature around Liu Ruyan seemed to drop several degrees. Su Care, standing nearby, frowned as she saw the dragon mother squirm. "Auntie, is he gone, or did you hide him from us?" The dragon mother was horrified. She threw up her hands. "What are you saying? This is my son. Why would I hide him?" Su Care snapped coldly. "Fine, since no one is here, it means he had a good reason to leave. I'll go and invite him myself." She resolutely headed towards my room. "Groom, come out quickly. Liu Ruyan is waiting," Su Care shouted, throwing open the doors. The dragon mother shuddered, realizing it was all over. She tried to rush to intercept him. "Commander Su, don't you dare break into someone else's quarters. Come back." But Su Care was faster. She had already pressed the door handle and swung the door wide open. The dragon mother's breath caught, expecting a scene, but Su Care froze in the doorway, staring into space. The room was completely empty. Long Yashin's shadow no longer dwelt here. Not a sound could be heard. "Ashin, where are you?" The dragon mother's words died in her throat when she saw the empty room herself. What did Su Care find? She ran inside, looked around, and came back out a moment later, holding a yellowed envelope. She looked at Liu Ruyan, who looked completely devastated. There was no one in the room, only this letter. Liu Ruyan took the envelope with trembling hands. Written large and painfully familiar on it were the words "Long Yashin" to Liu Ruyan. I recognized the style. Su Care froze, realizing that this letter contained the finale of our shared past. "You haven't seen him in 5 years. How come you still remember every line of his handwriting?" This question echoed in Liu Ruyan's mind. During my imprisonment, she received my monthly reports, which by her own order were placed on the desk in her office. She deluded herself that these papers were proof of my reformation, my attempt to become a man again. 5 years of shattered hopes. She carefully kept these 60 reports in her desk drawer like a relic, but now was no time for nostalgia. With trembling hands, she hastily opened the envelope, eagerly peering at the contents. Liu Ruyan stood frozen in shock. Beside her, Su-Care watched her with an expression of undisguised shock. She saw only a cold, unperturbed Liu Ruyan, but her hands holding the letter betrayed the storm raging within. The red piece of paper tucked inside the envelope contained just one short line. "Mom, I'm leaving for Guangzhou with Li Xia." Standing nearby, Long Mu desperately tried to understand the message, but the meaning eluded her. Long Jiaxin was in the room just a moment ago, so why had he disappeared? Liu Ruyan and Su-Care froze in indecision. Long Mu, seeing their confusion, didn't even bother to look at the letter until Jai Boda stumbled toward them. He said with poorly concealed triumph in his voice, "What good do you see in this Long Jiaxin? You still cling to him, even though he openly despises you. I knew he promised you something only to make a fool of you. I shouldn't have let him leave 5 years ago, then he wouldn't have been able to run away so vilely now." Long Mu, catching up with this, hastened to retreat. Jai Boda grabbed his mother's hand, feigning sobs. "I know how much you suffered, mother. Forgive me for not being able to hold him. He abandoned us for fame and fortune in Guangzhou with Li Xia. He was always a complete selfish man, never caring about our family." With every word, his false sorrow grew louder. He continued to play his part, convincing everyone of his hatred for the escaped Long Jiaxin. Jai Boda drew all the attention to himself, while Long Mu echoed him, mourning the loss of her son. Su-Care, watching this theatrics, frowned even more deeply. She looked at Liu Ruyan, trying to speak, but her cold voice interrupted her. This marriage, there was a steely edge to her words that exuded a deadly threat. "But this was approved from above, uncle. What's going on here? Tell me the truth," Liu Ruyan demanded. Jai Boda, hearing the mention of an alliance, was momentarily taken aback, but then he pulled himself together. "Don't be angry, Liu Ruyan. Do you remember the day he came home? He began to weave a new web of lies. He said back then that he didn't want to marry you. How could that be? You've been engaged since childhood. For 5 years he dreamed of replacing me." Jai Boda stopped short, swallowing nervously as if afraid of his own words. Liu Ruyan pressed, "What exactly did he say?" Jai Boda, enraged, continued, "He said outright that he doesn't like you. He said he wants me to take his place because you're nothing but a burden." "He was looking for a rich wife," Jai Boda lied, saying that women can be ugly as long as their wallets are full. He realized that money is all-powerful and forgot all about his former feelings. After these words, Liu Ruyan's face darkened, becoming like a thundercloud. She was furious. Long Mu, afraid that the lie would be exposed, nodded vigorously, supporting Jai Boda. "Yes, he's always been a vain egotist. He's not worthy of you. He left a letter in which he clearly stated that he was running for fame and fortune in Guangzhou," Jai Boda persisted. "He's so insignificant and greedy, no match for you, Liu Ruyan." She listened to this, and her face grew increasingly ugly with anger. Jai Boda stepped closer, deciding the time had come to deliver the finishing blow. Pretending to be gentle and kind, he whispered, "Liu Ruyan, I understand your pain. You don't understand how low he's fallen. Since he's decided to leave you, let me take care of you, okay?" He waited for her nod, looking at her pleadingly. A second, 2, 3, the silence stretched on. Liu Ruyan was silent for an eternity before abruptly pushing his hand away. "Uncle, you will always be nothing but a brother to me," she snapped. Hearing this, Jai Boda felt something break inside him. The light in his eyes instantly faded, replaced by impotent rage. Liu Ruyan, without looking at him, grabbed Su-Care's hand and pulled her away. She was pale and focused. Su-Care, waiting until they were a little further away, whispered, "I feel like something's wrong here. This is all too unnatural, both your mother's behavior and these accusations. Long Jiaxin clearly had some difficulties we don't know about. You should talk to him in person." Liu Ruyan remained silent, but for the first time, doubt dawned in her eyes. Everyone present was in complete shock. How could a man who had spent 5 years in prison not change his views and plans? What kind of difficulties could have caused him to disappear so suddenly? Su-Care turned her gaze to Liu Ruyan, who stood speechless, her lips pressed tightly together in an attempt to contain her emotions. Long Mu watched Liu Ruyan anxiously. The sound of his disappearance, the silence that hung in the room, it all weighed on her nerves. She was frightened and worried, but she tried to remain composed. If this matter wasn't resolved now, no one would know what really happened. After all, she was the mother of a soldier, and investigating such a case was her worst nightmare. She quickly turned away. The camera's gaze seemed riveted on the scene. The situation was becoming mortally dangerous. How had he lost his red hair? Fortunately, Liu Ruyan hadn't yet realized the substitution. The truth about what had happened in the room could be revealed at any moment, the moment they saw the emptiness behind the door. Long Mu frowned and quickly rose to her feet. What's going on with Yashin? He just left a note and suddenly vanished, she thought. Could he really have fled to Guangzhou with Li Xia? Jai Boda stood nearby, silent, merely observing the reactions of those around him. Long Mu seemed strange, and it didn't go unnoticed. "Uncle, what's wrong?" someone asked, but all I saw was Jai Boda gazing at Liu Ruyan. A wild, almost animalistic fire blazed in his eyes. What's so special about this Long Yashin? He thought. Liu Ruyan still hasn't chosen me, even though I'm the best option. That old beggar. Where did he go? He should have been left to rot in that prison until the very end. Long Mu was horrified by such malice. Frightened by Jai Boda's anger, she approached him and took his hand. "Uncle, please don't do this. You're scaring me." Jai Boda's face softened for a moment, giving way to a mask of feigned calm. But inside him, rage seethed. Long Yashin is to blame for everything. If it weren't for him, I would have long ago become Liu Ruyan's husband. Recalling the neighbors' whispers, he realized how badly his reputation had been damaged. Now the whole neighborhood knew the wedding had fallen through, and it threatened to spell disaster for him. Liu Ruyan doesn't want to be with me, and no one knows what will happen now, he panicked. Long Mu, seeing her uncle's state, felt a pang of pity. She tried to calm him, whispering words of encouragement. "Uncle, you have me. Mother will always be by your side. There's still a chance. While Liu Ruyan doesn't know the whole truth, we can fix everything. Mother will help you remember that." The entire Liu family, 3 generations of military officers, was looking forward to the holiday. The house was decorated in red, and a festive atmosphere permeated the air. Liu's mother stood at the entrance, awaiting her daughter's return, but when she saw Liu Ruyan walking alone, her heart sank. She exchanged glances with Father Liu, who was busy with the housework. Why had their daughter returned from the wedding alone? Father Liu paused for a moment, confused. Finally, Liu's mother broke the silence as she brewed tea. "Hear that? Looks like someone's back." She opened the teapot, her hands shaking slightly. "I don't care about the tea. I don't understand what's happening to the sky above. Why did she come back alone? Let's go out and ask her directly before something worse happens," she said, running out to meet her daughter. The Liu family hurried after Liu Mu, overcome with anxiety. As soon as they entered, they saw Liu Ruyan herself. "Liu Ruyan, what happened?" Liu Mu exclaimed. He looked around. There was no one behind his daughter, no trace of Long Yashin, not even his shadow. Could it be that he's dead?" Liu's father whispered, looking at the empty courtyard. Liu Mu was stunned as he looked at his daughter. "Liu Ruyan, weren't you supposed to get married? Why did you come back alone?" Liu Ruyan only nodded heavily. Her voice sounded hollow, as if it came from underground. "Our marriage didn't work out." Liu Mu was shocked. "What do you mean, didn't work out? How is that possible? I was expecting you to come back with your husband. And where's my son-in-law? What even happened?" Liu Fu, maintaining the last of his composure, tried to calm his wife. He looked at his daughter, who stood frozen in deathly silence. "Liu Ruyan, speak up. What happened? Is that man still angry? Didn't he want to marry you?" His questions rained down. The servants in the mansion, hearing the noise, froze in anticipation. "Bring my wife a coat. We'll go to Jai's house ourselves," Liu Fu commanded. Liu Ruyan's voice was very quiet, almost a whisper. "Daddy, don't go there." Liu Ruyan's voice, as she uttered these words, was laced with icy fury, like a lightning strike in a frozen valley. She added with a bitter smile, "He doesn't want to marry me. He ran off to Guangzhou with Li Xia, abandoning me at the altar." These words struck those present like a slap in the face. Liu Mu, who had been holding back his anger until that moment, lost it and furiously slapped his daughter on the back. "I was against sending Yashin to prison. He's kind. He never held a grudge against you. Do you even realize what a treasure his love was? Why did you ruin his life?" Liu Ruyan took the blow silently, unable to justify herself. A shadow of bitter pride mingled with a sense of guilt flickered across her face. "I didn't mean to hurt him. I only wanted to make him better," she whispered. Liu Fu, seeing his wife's state, hugged her tightly, trying to stop her trembling. Liu Ruyan, looking away, continued to weave a web of self-deception. "You yourself said it would be good for him. Why don't I just go after him and clear things up? I'll get his heart back." Hearing this, her parents froze. Liu Fu, whose face was frozen like cold steel, looked at his daughter with stern directness. "If you really still love Yashin, then you must prove it. As a soldier, you must muster the courage to admit your mistakes and sincerely ask him for forgiveness." Liu Ruyan shuddered at these words, but a dangerous glimmer of hope blazed in her eyes. Her heart pounded furiously. "Dad, Mom, I'm leaving for Guangzhou immediately. I'll find him myself and take him back." She turned without looking back, ready to drop everything for this goal. But before she could take 2 steps, she heard the screech of brakes. A green pickup truck came to a screeching halt right in front of her. Suker jumped out, breathing heavily. Liu Ruyan rushed towards her. "Suker, what a timely moment. Hurry up, take me to the station. I have to find Yashin." She was about to jump into the cab, but her friend stopped her. "Liu Ruyan, listen, you can't go to Guangzhou," Suker said firmly. Seeing the confusion in her friend's eyes, she continued slowly. Her words were like an icy wave, freezing all of Liu Ruyan's hopes. "Violent unrest has broken out at the border. Military forces are ordered to mobilize immediately. We must return to our unit." Suker crouched down, avoiding his gaze. "It means everything else doesn't matter now," she added. Liu Ruyan stood there, thunderstruck. She'd heard this song of duty and war hundreds of times over the years, and each time it meant the collapse of her personal plans. Her eyes were empty, her shoulders slumped. She no longer moved, as if a supporting bone had broken inside her. 3 years later, Guangzhou's central business street. I stood in an impeccable suit in the middle of a glittering pearl jewelry store. People bustled around me, and necklaces, each worth a fortune, glittered on the counters. My 500-square-meter business center was thriving. 50 small counters were surrounded by a dense crowd of shoppers. The success was overwhelming. I stood at the center of all this splendor, overseeing every process, and the store manager approached me. I was excited, but then the system's familiar, cold voice rang in my head. "Congratulations, owner, 3 years have passed. Your progress is complete. That person is me." The system once gave me a choice, either remain a worthless hero or become a business giant. I chose the latter and left for Guangzhou with Li Xia. 3 years passed, the project was a success, and now I was a completely different person. I turned around, looking at the source of my wealth, the enormous Australian pearl I'd brought home at the start of my journey. It was priceless and almost mythically beautiful. The price of this find was approaching 10 million. I couldn't find a worthy buyer for so long that I kept it in a locked warehouse. Today, I finally decided to sell it, and everyone around me held their breath. I mentioned the figure of 10 million as easily as if I were ordering a glass of water. Gasps of amazement erupted from everyone around me. "No wonder it's long, Yashin. His composure is simply astounding," the guests exclaimed, looking at me with undisguised adoration. In just 3 years, I completely reshaped the Guangzhou jewelry market. As soon as I opened a shop, neighboring gold, diamond, or electronics shops either closed or moved. All the customers were magically drawn to my display cases. It was believed that the moment I touched any piece of jewelry, it immediately acquired incredible value. My competitors couldn't compete with me. Their businesses were literally melting away before my eyes, becoming my property. By now, I've become the owner of 20 of the largest stores in the city. Rumor had it that when I first arrived in Guangzhou, my first business was confined to a cramped 10-square-meter closet. People whispered, "This guy's not that simple." But recently my company began expanding across the country, hiring agents in every region. My ambitions terrified even me. The manager brought the pearl out of the warehouse. I was just about to go outside when a woman walked into the store. She looked the very embodiment of luxury. Her pearl hairpin, earrings, necklace, rings, even the trim on her jacket, everything was covered in pearls. She wore a formal black jacket and dark sunglasses that obscured her face. It was Li Xia. She walked straight toward me and stopped. She didn't even glance at the purple pearls I held in my hands. "The man who wanted to buy this pearl just left Guangzhou," she said. I was shocked. "What? How left? Isn't she from here? Where could she have gone?" Li Xia simply confirmed that yes, she was from Guangzhou, but her husband was not. "Husband? Is she married?" I was stunned. I'd never heard of this. Li Xia explained that the engagement had taken place when they were children 3 years ago, but the groom had disappeared, and now the bride had returned to consummate the union. I frowned, looking at the announcement in my hands. Now was not the time for other people's weddings. The purple pearl shone in my hands like a night star. I needed to sell it to cover the costs of expanding my network, and I was willing to do anything to ensure its success. Li Xia looked at me with sympathy. "Oh, I can help you with that," she offered. I politely but firmly declined. "No need. You've already helped me a lot, and expanding is a risk I have to take myself." Li Xia didn't press the issue. She asked, "That guest, are you going to chase him? Where is his fiancée now?" She watched my reaction closely. My gaze flickered. Southeastern Military District, I replied. The very name of the place 3 years later echoed like 1,000 waves in my heart. Li Xia looked at me with obvious concern. Perhaps you'll find another buyer. This pearl is a real curse, almost impossible to sell. But I knew that sooner or later someone would come along who would appreciate it. I kept thinking about the words associated with that county. Li Xia remained silent, understanding that there was something hidden in the Southeast District that no one wanted to talk about. I stood motionless, saying nothing. She decided I was too relaxed. I raised my head and finally made a decision. Holding the pearl in my hand, I firmly said, "It doesn't matter who's in there, this matter is finished." I didn't break the goods, but carefully put them away. The train station. The green train enveloped the platform in smoke. Looking at the familiar station of my hometown, I felt a strange illusion. 3 years ago, having received a temporary assignment, I abandoned everything, my wedding, my life, and went to the border. I thought I'd be back in a couple of weeks. But the situation in the valley turned out to be a hell from which few returned alive. I remembered that wedding that never took place. Liu Ruyan's eyes gleamed with pain more acute than any maternal loss. "Okay, enough of this," she snapped. "You let him go. I have no plans for this marriage." Su Care's voice rang out. She left with Liu Ruyan. I only returned today, at this very moment. I was standing near the train station and approached a phone booth. A voice came over the phone. "He knows you're back alive. Go get some fresh air. I'm warning you, if you push him away again, I won't forgive you." Su Care frowned on the other end of the line. Hearing the dial tone, she hung up in irritation. "I just got back. My father's at it again, trying to persuade me to get married. I need to go home," she muttered, unaware that everything had changed in this city. Behind me, a special train approached with a heavy rumble. The platform's loudspeakers announced the station. "Dear passengers, the train from Guangzhou to the Southeastern Military Zone has arrived. Please prepare your belongings for disembarkation." As soon as I stepped onto the platform, Liu Ruyan, standing nearby, heard the announcement. When those two words, Guangzhou, reached her consciousness, confusion flashed across her eyes. Su Care, noticing it, immediately understood what she was thinking. She patted her friend on the shoulder. "Go ahead. If you truly want to take everything back, fate has given you a chance to meet." Liu Ruyan sat up abruptly, her expression determined and fierce. Without further hesitation, she rushed to the turnstile. But as soon as she turned around, she froze. She let out a high, strangled sound, gritting her teeth against the overwhelming emotion. Su Care followed her gaze in confusion. On the other side of the platform, having stepped off that same green train, stood I. I turned to say something to the woman walking behind me, and at that moment our eyes met. Su Care, realizing who was in front of her, exclaimed, "Liu Ruyan, it's Long Jiashan," but Liu Ruyan herself could no longer hear anything around her. She lunged forward, throwing her bag right onto the platform. The train driver, observing this scene, frowned. "Dangerous, officer, what are you doing?" His shout caused everyone around us to turn around. I heard a noise, but I didn't turn my head. Only a gust of wind past my ear made me alert, and the next second, Liu Ruyan's face appeared before me. I was completely confused until her voice cut through the air. "Oh my God, it's really you, you're back." She threw herself into my arms, and I felt the world around me suddenly stop. Her grip was tight, and in her chest, pressed against mine, I could feel her heart pounding. A mixture of despair, relief, and the pain of losing 3 years. But what did those feelings mean now? 3 years had passed, and those people no longer had any power over my mood. I was about to push her away, but Li Xia intervened, pulling Liu Ruyan aside. "What are you even thinking?" Li Xia blocked my path. Liu Ruyan, barely able to stand, glared at her with hatred. After all, it was Li Xia who had taken me to Guangzhou 3 years ago. Liu Ruyan's face turned black with anger, and she stood there, unable to move. "Li Xia, you're back too. You took him from me." Liu Ruyan's eyes flashed cold, and her fists clenched so hard her knuckles turned white. I couldn't help but close my eyes. I stepped between them, protecting Li Xia. "Liu Ruyan, I decided to go to Guangzhou myself. This has nothing to do with Li Xia, and for that matter, it no longer has anything to do with you." Liu Ruyan froze upon hearing my name from her lips. She turned her gaze to me, and an icy coldness was visible in the depths of her eyes. "Li Xia, what kind of relationship do you have?" It was unpleasant to see her interrogating me as if I still belonged to her. "Who is close to you? What business is it of yours between Li Xia and me?" I snapped. Liu Ruyan bit her lip until it bled. At that moment, she truly was a stranger to me. Her suffering no longer touched me. I turned to Li Xie. Come on, the driver is waiting for us. Li Xie nodded and followed me, but Liu Ruyan blocked her path, not retreating an inch. She looked at Li Xie menacingly. Don't think some higher power will protect you. You won't be safe forever. I'll come back for him, I swear, she hissed. Li Xie took my hand and looked straight into Liu Ruyan's eyes. Liu Ruyan, I don't know what you're imagining, Li Xie said calmly, but who needs your ownership of Yashin now? Who is he to you by rights? Her voice was quiet but confident. These words pierced Liu Ruyan like a gentle yet poisoned knife, leaving her frozen. Even after Li Xie and I had walked some distance away, the void in her heart continued to yawn, the space I had once occupied. A pain began to slowly swell in her chest. Remembering the person I used to care about most, she suddenly realized she had once asked me something and I had been willing to listen. Even when I was thrown in prison, I had been obedient, trying to improve for her sake, but now everything had changed. Everything has truly changed beyond recognition. The one who had always been my shadow, my faithful follower, has finally turned away and left without so much as a backward glance. And that position, that place in his heart that was dear to me, is now occupied by other people and other interests. So, is everything okay? Suker had already grabbed Liu Ruyan's backpack and headed for the stairs. By the time she reached the bottom, I was already far away. I was holding another woman's hand and we left the station together. Liu Ruyan merely frantically ran her fingers across her eyebrows. She tried to hide the bitter, acrid sadness that stung her eyes. Yes, everything's fine. Don't you want to go home? Come on, I'll take you, Suker said, turning away. She didn't care where she went as long as she was away from here. I'm in no hurry. I'll take you first, I replied, and Suker and I walked away in different directions. As we exited, we saw a luxury car pulling up to the Huatian Hotel. A driver was behind the wheel and Li Xie and I were in the backseat. Huatian is a new symbol of luxury that has opened in the city. They say there are 880 rooms and the presidential suite is absolutely stunning. The level of service there is off the charts, including private transportation. Our car was the newest Audi, the first of its kind in China. We drove past Liu Ruyan without even slowing down. The 4 grille rings glinted in the sun. Suker watched the car for 3 seconds, then quietly said, "Looks like Long Yashin has succeeded in Guangzhou like no other." Liu Ruyan, standing nearby, also noticed. The pain of realizing the contrast between our past and his present pierced his heart. He's getting better and better, and he doesn't care about me anymore. Was it possible that now that he'd found success, something more had sparked between him and Li Xie? The car's shadow flickered in and out of the windows of the buildings. In the backseat, Li Xie said softly, "Yashin, you have nothing to worry about. Liu Ruyan can't hurt you anymore. Everything that happened is a distant memory." I nodded automatically. Li Xie turned her head to look at me. "Oh my God, what's wrong? You look so distant." I looked at her closed eyes, trying to understand what she was feeling. Our hands accidentally touched. I felt a strange, unnatural tension. Li Xie sighed softly and I looked down. My hand was tightly gripping hers as if seeking support. The movement reminded me of Liu Ruyan. She was the first person to ever hold my hand like this. I jerked my hand away. Li Xie flinched, her expression filled with confusion. "I'm sorry, my hand was so warm, She trailed off, realizing the awkwardness of the moment, and her eyes widened. "I know you didn't mean it that way, you just want to help me sever all ties with the past with Liu Ruyan." "Thank you," I said, trying to sound as sincere as possible. "You're really trying to help me, right?" I looked at her, my eyes pleading for understanding. She saw how much pain that relationship had caused me and she felt responsible. "Of course," she replied, a quiet fury in her voice. "She's hurt you so much, I have to help you." I looked at Li Xie without saying anything else. I pulled my hand away again and stared out the window. A bitter, acidic feeling welled up in my heart. I couldn't control it. I didn't know what I wanted and didn't want to think about it. My current life consisted of work, business partners, new acquaintances. It was my safe cocoon. Our relationship had gone further than that of ordinary people, but what lay ahead? Gold, success, the unknown. I was afraid of being wounded again, afraid of blood and tears, so I lived only here, not daring to look into the future. Suker, meanwhile, thrust her green pickaxe into the ground, ending our conversation. Soon, Liu Ruyan returned to her family home in the southeast military region. The place was steeped in the history of 3 generations of soldiers. She grew up here, knowing every corner. Suker approached the gate, trying to remain silent. Liu Ruyan, who had remained silent until then, suddenly quietly reminded her, "You'll come back, right? Don't tell your parents what happened to Long Yashin. They'll be angry when they learn the truth. Liu Fu and Liu Mu always loved me. They saw me as their future son-in-law. But after the wedding fell through," she trailed off, knowing the consequences would be catastrophic. "I was absent for 3 years. During that time, I only visited Liu Fu at the border once on assignment. Liu Mu didn't even bother to call me. He was still angry. But Suker was very worried about me. I tried to speak to Long Yashin, but before I could finish my sentence, a shadow flashed right in front of the car. I sprinted toward my car, cutting off a branch as I went. The sound of a passing car could be heard somewhere in the distance. Liu Ruyan jerked forward but was immediately thrown back against the glass. I tried to calm myself, pushing away thoughts of the recent danger. At that moment, a shadow jumped out from the side and cried out excitedly, "Liu Ruyan, it's you, you're back." I lowered my head. I saw Jai Boda running up to me. Liu Ruyan was overjoyed, screaming in shock. Jai Boda was sitting in the car, hugging her. Hearing his voice, she looked up. "Liu Ruyan, where have you been for these 3 years? You looked for me but couldn't find me. I missed you so much," she said. Jai Boda leaned into Liu Ruyan, hugging her tighter, but she only retreated. I pulled Jai Boda away from her embrace. "I left 3 years ago. Why did you come to me?" I asked. My answer was cool and calm, a contrast to his agitated demeanor. Jai Boda was clearly stunned when I pushed him away. He was shocked, but recognition quickly lit up his eyes. "After you left for Guangzhou, you disappeared. I didn't know where you were and kept going to the military base asking about you. I only found out you were back today and immediately rushed to the gate. I was so worried about you, but luckily you're here," Jai Boda blurted out, looking straight at me. I wanted to get Liu Ruyan's attention, but she seemed to miss my meaning. I didn't know what to think, and his gaze made it difficult for me to speak. "Go home," I said, leaving Jai Boda perplexed. Liu Ruyan said something again, her voice ominous. Jai Boda frowned, completely at a loss, and tried to climb through the window again. "What did you say?" he asked, though I said nothing. Suker, who had been watching us, suddenly interjected, "You'll understand everything when you get back," and tugged at my hand. I started the car and pulled away, leaving Jai Boda behind. He stood there, watching us go. I saw the tenderness with which he had just looked at me vanish. His eyes darkened with rage. He was furious, so angry at Suker. I knew he'd been hostile to me ever since he got married, so I simply decided to leave. Suddenly, a man in a nondescript suit, glasses, and an expensive watch appeared before me. Despite his simple attire, he exuded nobility. Even at first glance, it was clear he was rich. He looked at me with a slight smile. Jai Boda was about to lose his temper at that look, but noticing the signs of wealth, he decided not to risk it and, looking away, walked away. He only managed to take a few steps. The stranger caught up with him and stopped him. "Do you know Suker? What's your relationship like?" he asked in a gruff voice. Apparently, the rich man had a nasty temper, and Jai Boda frowned with displeasure. "Who are you?" Jai Boda asked. The man, whose name was Lin Hao, replied, "Since she doesn't have any feelings for me, I don't want to marry her." Lin Hao then looked at Jai Boda intently. I realized the woman didn't want to get married, but no one was going to let her go either. Jai Boda was even happy. He realized he'd misunderstood my relationship with Suker and remembered how kind she had been to me. Jai Boda chuckled, "Don't pay attention and don't misunderstand me. I have no relationship with Suker, but she's a dangerous person, always keeping secrets. Even my Liu Ruyan can't reach her." Lin Hao listened attentively. Lin Hao frowned as he listened to the first part, but when Jai Boda finished, his eyes lit up with satisfaction. Jai Boda was about to leave, but he turned around and added, "Liu Ruyan." "Are you talking about Liu Ruyan?" Lin Hao asked again. "She was willing to go to jail to marry you. You didn't like that, so you made her leave. What were you even thinking?" Meanwhile, Suker wiped the blood from her wrist. She stood by the bookshelf, her emotions unmasked. How was I supposed to know she heard that call? Besides, this is the era of free love, so why all these weddings? Are you still thinking about hostility? Maybe she didn't want to marry me herself, you just don't know her. Su Fu, hearing this, slammed the table. "You're right, you ruined the wedding dress right after you returned. If I had known this would happen, you shouldn't have come back." With that, she grabbed something and threw it at Suker. She threw the thing, but it hit the door. Suker couldn't resist and ran inside. I grabbed her hand. "What are you doing? Care has been gone for 3 years. Are you trying to kill her?" Suker saw the old man approach and joyfully pointed to her things. Dad, calm down. This is a rare gilded inkwell. If you break it, you'll never find another like it. Suker was so glad that this thing survived, but then she grabbed the even more expensive and heavy dolly stone tablet, preparing to throw it away. Sumyu screamed, "Are you crazy?" Su Fu shuddered and froze. He was about to explain, but turned around and heard Suker's voice from the other side of the table. He frowned and looked at me. "Suker, you have to marry Lin Hao, otherwise I won't be able to finish with you." Then he turned to Sumyu. I sighed. Yu Zhang had often said I didn't have the necessary grip and that it would lead to losses. I asked around and finally found a buyer, Lin Hao. I immediately returned to the room, intending to pick up the purple pearl for the transaction. Li Xia yelled at me, "Oh my god, you can't be trusted." After checking everything, I picked up the item and headed back there again, feeling confused. "Why are you worried?" Li Xia asked. "What if he doesn't buy it? How could he not buy it?" "How is a difficult man? If he says he'll buy something, he'll buy it. I need those 10 million, otherwise my store expansion project will fail." I don't know when Li Xia will hear something like that from me again. Yu Yan's face expressed genuine sympathy. "Li Xia, what are you worried about? Do you know something?" Li Xia sighed and looked down. "Lin Hao's fiancé, you know me better than anyone. I know what you're thinking." I glared at Li Xia. "No way." Li Xia nodded and said slowly, "That same friend, handsome as smoke. Susur Hulk Hotel, room 815. The door to room 815. I stood before Li Xia. Her gaze was fixed on my hand where I held a small, suspicious-looking safe. Li Xia asked, "My god, why do you insist on bringing this here?" I looked at the safe. Deep down, I was nervous. But to close the deal, I had to show Hao some trust. Throw away my arrogance. It doesn't matter who he marries. Li Xia stared at me, her face filled with admiration. I saw the light. I was looking at Li Xia when I suddenly heard the sound of the door opening. Lin Hao's face appeared on the threshold. "How long time no see?" I'd known him for 3 years. We talked often, though we didn't see each other that much. I tried to smile, though I didn't feel particularly enthusiastic inside, and nodded at the safe in my hand. "How were you in such a hurry from Guangzhou? I heard you were here, so I decided to bring you some pearls quickly." But my enthusiasm wasn't reciprocated. Lin Hao's face remained as cold as ice. Li Xia noticed this and frowned. I suddenly realized that I'd never really considered Lin Hao a true friend. At that moment, I was calm and even glad to see him, so without thinking, I stepped forward, intending to embrace him. Li Xia had already realized that Lin Hao's expression was unnatural. I almost pulled him into an embrace, but Lin Hao abruptly took a step back. I heard the cold beginning of his merciless words. "Take your pearls back, I'm not buying them." I froze, crouched down, and for a long moment I couldn't utter a word. Lin Hao looked at me with undisguised wariness. There was no trace of the warmth I'd grown accustomed to in his gaze. I no longer cared about the expensive item in my hands. I asked, "Brother Hao, what happened?" But the next second Lin Hao looked at me with undisguised disgust. "I'll never buy anything from you again. You're dishonest." This old man, his determination was so terrifying that it only made me feel sick. Having said this, he slammed the door. "Be careful!" Li Xia caught me just in time, preventing me from hitting the door. Lin Hao's words struck a nerve. The old wound, which had seemed to be healing, suddenly began bleeding again. The pain was so intense I could barely breathe. Even though my head was in chaos, I tried to maintain the remnants of calm. "Li Xia, what could he have found out? Who told him?" Li Xia also frowned, unable to answer. Soon her voice softened. She turned her attention to me. "It's all in the past. There's no need to think about it. Let's go back. I'll ask someone to find out what's going on." I glanced again at the tightly closed door. I nodded silently. Li Xia took the safe from me and led me out of the hotel. On the way out, we bumped into Jai Boda. He stood straight ahead, his eyes filled with undisguised hatred. "Long Ocean, are you really leaving?" "Why did you come back?" he asked. "Shirin, I've been thinking about Liu Ruyan for several days. He's back," I replied, feeling Jai Boda close his eyes. Did Liu Ruyan really know that I, Long Ocean, had returned? He realized, looked at me, and a hint of hostility flashed in his gaze. "Long Ocean, don't try to take Liu Ruyan away from me." I honestly didn't understand why he was reacting like that. "How can you be so handsome as to come back?" He seemed blinded by his own rage. I glanced at the insurance check in Li Xia's hand. Memories of blood flashed through my mind. My lips curled into a wry smile. "Well then, I'll help you disappear forever." After Lin Hao sent me away, I felt different. Deep down, I was tormented by guilt, constantly wondering, maybe I went too far. Perhaps Lin Hao had his own reasons for hating him. Whatever the case, Yashin didn't strike me as a bad person, but my heart told me otherwise. His brother Jaiboda said I was so jealous that I stole his things, which is why I was sent to prison. Would my own brother slander me like that? But Jaiboda himself claimed I stole Liu Ruyan from him. Yet when we drank tea in Guangzhou, he was kind and gentle. He didn't seem like the type to steal a girl. The more I thought about it, the more confused Lin Hao became. The incomprehension filled him with ever-increasing rage. He sat down on the sofa, feeling a bitter pain in his chest. He stared at his hands, trying to comprehend, what the hell is going on? Am I lying to him, hiding behind a false mask? He wondered. Half an hour passed, but Lin Hao still couldn't remember anything. He couldn't stand it any longer and left. Unable to find a hotel room, he moved elsewhere. After all, his father was the richest man in Guangzhou. He grew up in the village and was accustomed to a different reality. His father always followed him, trying not to irritate him. In fact, the rich boy was never hot-tempered. He simply loved to make fun of himself. It was the same with Long Ashen. It takes time to understand who's good and who's bad. Suker did the same. He knew he had a fiancée he was obligated to marry, and yet he met Suker anyway. Even when he was very young, he probably didn't even remember me. I secretly kept a photo of Suker. Her martial arts skills weren't the greatest, but those peach-bud eyes were so disconcerting. Lin Hao's father wasn't pleased. When he saw her, his father, an honest and honorable man, was perplexed. How could his daughter be so weak? Lin Hao almost jumped up, defending her. Dad, you've been in business for so long. How can you be so bad at judging people? Suker is a soldier. How can he be bad? But his father only listened. Stroking his overgrown beard, he replied, you haven't married yet. You'll go into the outside world, and if you don't have a wife, will you still consider me your father after we get married? Lin Hao realized he'd been too stubborn. It was then that he realized he truly hoped to marry this Suker. He was already in love with her when he returned. He called her, but was told that Suker didn't agree to the marriage. She didn't want to marry him at all. Lin Hao was stubborn, but he liked her, and that made him nervous. He didn't want to believe she was bad. Lin Hao decided not to marry and was about to leave the hotel. At that moment, an accident occurred across the street. He didn't immediately notice the details. He only saw an old man sitting on the ground and crying. Lin Hao was shocked. He ran up to the victim. Were you hit by a car? How are you feeling? Any pain or discomforts? The old man merely frowned in pain. At that moment, the car's rear door opened. A man jumped out of the car and ran up to us. What's going on? Why did you suddenly fall in front of my car? I, who was examining the old man, heard this and looked up. How do you talk to an old man? Do you think he did this on purpose? I asked, peering into the stranger's face. Lin Hao, who was nearby, was acting fierce. He recalled our recent phone conversation, how she hadn't wanted to marry him. Ultimately, he decided to remain silent and not turn toward her, following his principles. Suker tried to explain, I didn't say that on purpose, but she didn't have time to finish. The man standing in front of her turned around and snapped, don't talk to him anymore. Suker was taken aback. What else do you want to say? Forget it. Let's take the old man to the hospital for a checkup. Suker quickly called an ambulance. She was very solicitous. How are you? Is there anything bothering you? Don't be afraid, just tell me. She took responsibility for the situation, unlike the rude guy who had approached earlier. I listened to her words, struck by their melody. The woman who had helped the old man seemed so gentle and pure, but her recent words, if not for the silence of my old lady, I would have suspected something was wrong. Perhaps this was simply a slap in the face from fate. At this point, the old man tried to get up. Young man, I'm fine, really. But Lin Hao fidgeted. Don't worry, I'll take you to the hospital for a checkup. Even if everything seems fine at first glance, you can't ignore a fall like this. The old man's face was swollen and he opened his mouth with difficulty. Go, young man, let me go. I don't have money for an examination. No money? That was the first thing that caught her eye. The old man's clothes were heavily patched, his forehead and feet covered in deep wrinkles. He looked like a poor man, worn out by life. Suker noticed it too. She had seen many people living in such poverty and knew their fears. No money for doctors meant enduring the pain. And if the examination revealed a serious illness, you'd spend your last and the situation would only worsen. Better to live in uncertainty than to move closer to death every day. Suker sighed softly, free medical care. He can still be cured, let's treat it as charity. She wanted to say something else, but I approached them, sighing heavily. I noticed the old man was acting strange, but when it came to going to the hospital, Lin Hao took the initiative. Don't worry, I'll help you. That rich official whose car you fell in front of has already left, don't worry. The old man looked confused, either angry or afraid. I looked at him, he was looking straight at me, his gaze provocative. I jerked my gaze away, feeling a chill. This was a bad sign. But Lin Hao paid no attention. He remained patient, continuing to coax the old man. Don't be afraid, I'll go with you to the hospital and stay by your side. That man won't dare harm you again. An ambulance arrived soon after. The old woman was with Lin Hao and I also got into the escort car. Although Su Care heard Lin Hao's words, she remained silent, observing the proceedings. I paid all the bills for the examination. Fortunately, the results were good. The elderly woman's family soon received news and came to pick her up. Su Care stood at the hospital door, blocking Lin Hao's path. She peered closely at his face. She saw his eyes deep with black pupils, as if peering into her very soul. The man was handsome and gentle, but why did he emanate such cold hostility toward me? Su Care looked within and realized she'd never met him before. She asked bluntly, "Do you know me? Why this misunderstanding?" Lin Hao merely shook his head. "No, I haven't seen you." If Su Care hadn't been so sure, she would have believed his reaction, but she sensed a catch. What exactly did I do to provoke him? He didn't answer, remaining terse, and changed the subject. "That's good. Since we're here, tell me your name, or maybe you don't have to." I heard her address him. "Who are you destined for? Do you enjoy being indebted to someone? This has nothing to do with me." Lin Hao snapped and left immediately. Perhaps he was too angry. He turned around, looked at Su Care, and disappeared completely. I still didn't understand how to make peace with him, or even what the reason for his behavior was. Lin Hao didn't ask any questions, and Su Care only grew angry. It was absurd, but for some reason she seemed so interested in this man. That was just her personality. Who told him to be so serious? He thought it was normal, but I felt the opposite. Su Care was filled with boundless curiosity, and she carried it with her like a burden. Returning home, she went inside. Her father greeted her with a disgruntled expression. "You didn't find anyone. Where is he? Why did you come back alone?" Su Care replied, "I went to the hotel to look for those people, but before I could even get in, there was an accident on the way. I didn't have time to look." Hearing the word accident, Su Mu's mother became alarmed. "Care, are you hurt?" She quickly replied, "Mom, I'm fine, you see." She spread her arms. The old man just fell in front of the car. "I sent him to the hospital and came back straight away." Su Mu breathed a sigh of relief. "I was afraid you were injured. The main thing is that you're safe." Su Care felt the warmth of that moment. The aroma from the kitchen filled the house. "Mom, what did you cook? It smells so delicious." Su Mu replied, "Your favorite Guangzhou-style soup, old chicken with medicinal herbs for strengthening the body." Su Mu took her hand. "Let's go to the kitchen and eat. You suffered for 3 years, and in 2 days of running around the streets, you've lost all your weight." But the next second, her father Su Fu suddenly interrupted her. "Isn't this what she deserves? The guest who welcomed you has disappeared. I can't find anyone. I'm an old man. I'll have no mercy." Su Fu approached the table. "Sit down and eat." Su Mu looked at him and tried to soften the situation. "He's just been confused lately, don't worry. Even if he wants to find someone, he shouldn't refuse food." But Su Care, looking away, distanced herself from her mother. "Forget it, I'll continue my search. I'm in his debt. As soon as I find out everything, I'll personally pack up this Lin Hao and send him back to Guangzhou." Having said this, Su Care turned and left. No matter how Su Mu called her, she didn't turn around. Returning to the table, her mother saw Su Fu finishing her chicken broth and couldn't help herself. "What are you doing? I prepared this for my daughter, not for you," Su Mu said indignantly. "Did I say anything wrong? I merely wanted to remind my son not to disappoint the young man's sincerity," Su Fu grumbled. Su Mu sighed, looking at the door. "I hope he understands our feelings. He grew up with Liu Ruyan, and I'm afraid that will make him ungrateful, but it's too late for regrets." At that moment, Su Mu's attention shifted completely to her father. Su Fu devoured the soup with gusto, saying contentedly, "Wife, your chicken soup is simply delicious. I want another helping." Su Mu handed him a full bowl. I saw my mother's eyes sparkle when she looked at her daughter. Su Care looked so much like her. Although my father was embarrassed, he still went into the kitchen and Su Care left the house. I just happened to run into Liu Ruyan, who was looking for me. Once Su Care calmed down, she realized that Lin Hao was most likely staying at the Huatian Hotel and decided to head there. Meanwhile, Lin Hao, after much deliberation, decided he should talk to me first. Deep down, he was tormented by doubts. Am I a good person or a bad person? These thoughts gave him no peace. He went to Huation and found out my room number. He rode the elevator up and paused at the door. Several times he raised his hand to knock but hesitantly lowered it. The door remained closed and Lin Hao sat next to him, feeling bitterness in his soul. Frowning, he chided himself for his cowardice. After much introspection, he finally made up his mind, but just as he raised his hand to knock on the door, someone appeared right behind him. The stranger grabbed him by the throat and asked brazenly, "Long Ocean?" Lin Hao nodded upon hearing his name. It was the stranger in a short-sleeved hat. The face beneath the hat was hidden in shadow. Lin Hao caught only a glimpse of the man's eyes glittering gold. He tried to break free and run, but it was too late. The man grabbed him with an iron grip, clamping his mouth shut. "I don't care who you are Long Ocean," he growled. Lin Hao looked him straight in the eyes. He desperately resisted and tried to scream, but his mouth was tightly shut. At that moment, voices were heard on the stairs. Someone was approaching. It was Liu Ruyan. "This is the 6th floor, we're here," Su Keir's voice rang out. Lin Hao tensed, trying to get his attention, but the kidnapper tried harder to hold him back. The muscles in his arms were like steel. With one hand, he held Lin Hao's body down. With the other, he clamped his mouth shut. As Su Keir and Liu Ruyan's voices drew closer, the criminal dragged Lin Hao into another corridor. When they entered my hallway, there was no one there. Liu Ruyan and Su Keir walked through my door, and Liu Ruyan immediately noticed 3 deep scratches on the wall. It didn't look like an accident. Dust was visible on the floor and carpet. A soldier's instincts are heightened. Su Keir understood everything too. We were breathing only occasionally. Scratches on the wall stretched all the way from the door. The deeper we went, the deeper the tracks became until they disappeared at the steps. Liu Ruyan and Su Keir exchanged glances. We slowed our pace and stopped in front of the security door. A slight movement was suddenly heard in the narrow space. But it died down just as quickly. A shadow flashed before my eyes. I instinctively raised my hand. At that moment, I clearly saw a person. It must have been the kidnapper's captive. "How are you? Are you okay?" I asked. Su Keir was furious. She recognized the man who had been so rude to her in the hospital. She was shocked. "Lin Hao, how did you get here?" Upon seeing Su Keir, he glared at her with such hatred as if he had met his sworn enemy. "I thought I was going to die. I thought I'd never see you again," he whispered, but Su Keir merely pushed his hand away in irritation. Hearing his doubts, I gently placed my hand on his back and patted him reassuringly. "It's okay, I'm here." At that moment, Liu Ruyan grabbed the kidnapper tightly. Liu Ruyan grabbed the kidnapper's arm tightly, leaning on something, and led him outside. Lin Hao had already regained consciousness by then, but Su Keir noticed with alarm that he had sustained a deep wound. And his eyebrows weren't as thick as they seemed at first glance. The kidnapper's gaze froze, becoming completely lifeless. Liu Ruyan stared at Lin Hao as soon as he left and asked her question. Click, my door opened. Hearing the noise in the hallway, I decided to see what was going on. Opening the door, I saw Liu Ruyan, Su Keir, and Lin Hao, and next to them, a mysterious man with his hands tied behind his back. All 3 stared at me. I was perplexed. "What are you doing at my door?" Liu Ruyan, seeing me, remembered the purpose of her visit, and her gaze slid to the screen. But Lin Hao began to speak. "Long Ocean, I'm here to ask you." Lin Hao paused, choosing his words carefully, and then continued. "It's about what you did in prison. Did you really commit that theft? Were you imprisoned because your hands were dirty?" After saying this, he fell silent, waiting for an answer. Liu Ruyan acted even more strangely, afraid to even point a finger at me. But Su Keir, hearing the question, froze, watching me intently. It was as if she was waiting to see if I'd dare expose the adults who had been used to keeping quiet about it. My heart skipped a beat, but I quickly pulled myself together. My brain started working at full speed. I remembered how Lin Hao had refused the pearls, suspecting me of dishonesty. Last time, there had been no chance to justify myself, but now the time had come. I decided to take the initiative. "Haoji, that's not true. I didn't steal the money. That's not what I was imprisoned for. It's the truth. Will you believe me?" All 3 froze, stunned by my words. Liu Ruyan was shocked. Lin Hao frowned, considering the accuracy of what he'd said. Su Keir glanced at him. What did I just call him? "Haoji?" Su Keir was stunned. Could it really be Lin Hao? There was a moment of silence. At that moment, the kidnapper standing next to me glared at me. He growled, "You are Long Ocean." and the next second the kidnapper, who had been controlled by Liu Ruyan, lunged forward furiously. A small knife flashed in his hand. The weapon was apparently hidden up his sleeve. But he wasn't fast enough. Seeing the blade flying towards me, I grabbed his arm. I hadn't expected this bandit to be so fearless, almost like a corpse. I dodged, but the kidnapper still lunged forward. Almost simultaneously, the pungent smell of blood filled the air. It was Li Xia. The bandit looked at his hand, stained red. I was almost mad with rage. "I'll kill you for this." I jumped up, tackled the criminal to the floor, and pinned him to the ground. "Shut up," I barked, completely incapacitating him. I subconsciously glanced at the bandit and then saw Li Xiu bleeding from the knife wound. I was shocked. I only saw him fall, speechless. Li Xia, I cried out, unsure what to do. Li Xia raised his eyebrows. Despite the sharp pain in his side, he smiled his usual gentle smile. "You're not offended, are you?" My heart began to pound wildly. My insides were seething with a mixture of pain and acid, but I couldn't approach him as I was still holding the bandit. I shook my head, trying to calm myself. "It's okay, you're the one in trouble if it weren't for my actions." If it weren't for the fact that I dodged them several times, the kidnappers wouldn't have harmed Li Xia. Finally, Li Xia exhaled, "Okay," and closed his eyes, losing consciousness. An unimaginable panic erupted in the hotel. The receptionist quickly called the police to pick up the bandits and an ambulance to take Li Xiu to the hospital. I was in a complete panic and didn't even notice Liu Ruyan follow the car. Only Su Care and Lin Hao remained nearby. When the kidnappers attacked with a knife, Su Care and Liu Ruyan intervened just in time, preventing the worst from happening. Su Care, caring for Lin Hao, never left his side. Watching the ambulance drive away, she said, "Here you go." Lin Hao remained silent, unresponsive. Su Care placed her hand on his shoulder, trying to reassure him, but he tried to pull away. She glanced around nervously. "What happened? You were just kidnapped. I'm really worried. I'll take you to the hospital," she said, looking at his lowered hand. "I told you not to resist." I tugged at Lin Hao's hand, intending to lead him out of here. I was also nervous. After all, being sent by ambulance had been stressful. "Never mind, I'll take you there myself," I added. Lin Hao shook my hand. He pulled away. "Thank you, but I can drive to the hospital myself. I don't want to bother you." Su Care looked at him and suddenly said. A hint of resentment crept into her voice. "I just saved you and you forgot so quickly." Lin Hao looked imperious and cold. I briefly wondered if he was being too ungrateful, but then I noticed his tone softened. "I haven't forgotten, just don't bother me anymore. We're not related, not even friends, but I'll repay you for saving my life," Su Care replied, looking him straight in the face. "If she wants to repay, let her promise." "What exactly?" Lin Hao asked, surprised. He thought he'd misheard, but realized she wasn't joking. His face remained gloomy. "You say that to everyone. Could a girl really be so frivolous?" Su Care shook her head. "Of course not." She slowly opened her mouth, answering his doubts. "I won't tell this to others, I'll only say." Her voice dropped to a whisper. She leaned towards his ear and breathed out, "To my fiancé." Lin Hao didn't expect such words. He realized I was her husband. A man usually doesn't resist such a status, and remembering that very first call, he realized it was me. His heart sank. He recalled his previous thoughts. He hadn't wanted to marry a stranger, afraid of ruining another's happiness. But now, with Su Care before him, he couldn't think of anything else. "What did you say?" he asked. "Sit down and listen to me," she continued, and there was such sincerity in her words. "I like you very much. If I'm not with you, it will be a cause for regret for the rest of my life." Meanwhile, a 5-hour rescue operation began at the sanatorium. Li Xia was out of danger. The operation had been successfully completed. I was with him the entire time, and Liu Ruyan waited outside the room. My mind raced over the confession I'd made to Lin Hao in prison. Had I really been framed? If this is true, then I, Long Ocean, can't just turn around and leave. I decided to call some friends to conduct a thorough investigation. I was sitting by the bed. Li Xia's face was completely pale from the massive blood loss. Suddenly, his hand moved. I anxiously leaned forward. "Li Xia, are you awake?" "You're finally awake," I said, my voice filled with genuine relief. Li Xia looked at me. "Sorry for making you worry." I grabbed his hand tightly. "Li Xia, don't say such things. When you fainted, I finally realized that my heart ached for you. I got your hint." He heard me and his face lit up with tenderness. He squeezed my hand tightly. Oh God, I feel like the wound doesn't hurt anymore. It was worth it. I heard his voice and couldn't hold back my tears. What are you talking about? I saw Li Xia, usually solemn, now beaming like a child who just received candy. My heart warmed and I squeezed his hand again. But next time, I added, please don't get hurt again. At that moment, Li Xia's eyes. I touched her eyes, she nodded in response and quietly said, Suddenly, I remembered the recent incident. She said that the real mastermind behind that kidnapper was hiding. We went to the police station where a shock awaited us. When I saw the person handcuffed, I couldn't believe my eyes. It was Jai Boda. Liu Ruyan was also completely distraught. How could it be you? Yashin is your brother. Why would you want to harm him? Liu Ruyan's voice trembled. Jai Boda's face twisted into a mad grimace, glaring at her with wild despair which turned to rage after he was exposed. Because I like you, I want to marry you, he shouted, looking at her. His face brightened, but his eyes blazed with hatred for me. Why were you always in front of me? Why did you come back from Guangzhou? The only thing I hate is that I didn't let you rot in prison. I never wanted you to be free. Liu Ruyan turned pale with horror. So I really was framed when I went to prison. Jai Boda was behind it all. But no matter how hard I tried to prove my innocence, no one wanted to listen to me, considering me a liar. Liu Ruyan's heart sank as if stabbed. She looked at me with wide, pain-filled eyes, and I looked at Jai Boda. There was no hatred left in my eyes, only emptiness. Jai Boda, the law will give you what you deserve. You no longer need to worry about me becoming an obstacle. The wait for retribution will last an eternity for you, I said and turned to leave. Just go away, Jai Boda shouted. I saw only impotent rage in his eyes. Yashin, I'll kill you, you'll come back to me, he screamed, but I only laughed in response. The policeman pinned him to the floor, calming his rampage. Jai Boda fell silent, cowering in fear. After he was led away, Liu Ruyan ran after me. Now she knew the truth. But she didn't know how to look me in the eye. Her voice was hoarse with tears. Oh God, I'm so sorry, Liu Ruyan, I don't accept your apology, I snapped. Even in prison, Jai Boda wouldn't leave me alone. He almost killed me there. I was lucky to survive, and now I'm living my life. I don't want to forgive you. Please don't come looking for me or bother me anymore. These words were the final word for her. I had no intention of turning around. I'd already thought it all through. I needed to get to the hospital to see Li Xia, bring her some soup, and oversee her treatment. Liu Ruyan remained standing in the same place. She stood in the bright sun, but she was shivering from the cold. She watched me go with a look full of regret that would now be her constant companion for the rest of her days.